Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of Coaching Kristy 2 here on DeucesCrack.com. This is Andrew Beluga Whale Sideman, and with me, as always, is Kristy Arnett.
Hey.
And last time we went through 4 tables of 50 cent $1, which is what we're going to do again this time. And we sort of got away from thinking about what are the sort of basic things we're going to do against your fishy guys and your loose passives and even your bad aggressives or whatever. And we're getting more into what do we do against thinking players? What do we do? Like what sorts of rules do they live by, and how do we flip those things on their head and go by a different set of rules? And we were going to do the same video that we sort of keep on going on the same video that we saw last time, but actually we have a better one that we're going to look at today, and so we're going to just move along with that. Anything you want to
Also,
add before we start?
yeah, I was just gonna say I recorded this before we talked in the last episode, so some of the changes and things aren't going to be implemented here, or I wasn't equipped with the knowledge
Yeah,
that I would have been for the first one, but for the next one, I'll definitely record a new session, and hopefully I can put into practice a few of the things that you told me last week and this week.
Yep,
So.
and we should clarify the way we're doing this also too, which we should have done last time. But we're gonna do 4 episodes, and then sort of there won't be any interruption for you guys. But between when we record them, Chrissy's gonna come back after the first 4 coaching sessions, and then sort of try to play some hands and get in the rhythm of things, and then come back. And the last 4 episodes will be sort of like a evaluation of how she's doing in terms of applying the new theory stuff. Again, I saw in the comment thread. For the preview of this that you guys were saying, please get away from pre-flop and get towards post-flop, and that's what we're going to try to do. So with that said, we will roll the tape and see what kinds of things you're ready to screw up.
I can't wait.
So I think folding the jacket suit on the left table is okay, but I think that folding it on the right table might be a mistake. So let's see what we choose to do. We re-raise. Before I comment on this, why do you re-raise?
Um, Well, okay, so someone who's raising 2.5 times the big blind on
Mm-hmm.
the button, I think, is probably someone who studies poker, knows what it means to use leverage and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was thinking that I would be polarized in my three betting range.
Mm-hmm.
So, I thought that Jack 8 suited was a decent enough hand to, like, to three bet as a bluffing part of my
Mm-hmm.
range. So. That's why I did it. Although I think that I just potted it, which I think probably maybe I should make it a little bit more when someone
Sure.
two
Oh,
and a half
you have to
X.
think about what do you think this person is likely to respond, to do to respond to 3 bet. If you think like I do that they're probably going to fold, just about anything that's not good broadways or a decent pair or a strong ace or something like that, then you need to make it just big enough that they don't start calling with other things. And I think that maybe against a lot of these guys, you can just get away with hitting pot or maybe slightly more than pot, because they have, like I said, they have these sort of rigid plans that are not going to adjust very well. And if he's not going to call you with a lot of light things, then this is great. And this is actually what I was going to hope that I was going to say. If you didn't 3 bet this, I think this is a 3 bet. So that's good. Um, and Jacket Suit is a really actually a pretty dang good hand to have in this spot because um, a risk of being dominated exists, but it's not tremendous. We can make straights, which is like a very nice thing as well as flushes. It's just a good hand to have.
Hmm.
It has good equity against one thing that since I've been playing a little bit more tournaments lately. Um, One thing that you start to realize from these from a lot of tournaments, so he just insta ships over top. I think this should be a snap call with Ace King.
I was thinking when he just ships like that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously it's less likely as aces or kings, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So yeah,
So your worst case scenario, you're flipping here like always.
yeah.
Um, so let's pause it. We'll see what you do with the eights up there too. You rears the eights, which I like again. I'll be kind of surprised if you don't call with the ace king here. Folding this would be a good mistake. Okay, yeah, call. And we're gonna chop it a lot. There's a decent amount of time he's gonna have a low pair, but also very possible you could have something like ace queen as well. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
And so, uh, I have no problem whatsoever with taking that line. That looks good. Um, but no, what I was going to say with regards to when you play tournaments, when you get really low like stacks at the end of the day, and you start seeing like 15 big blinds, 20 big blinds, stuff like that, you get a lot of things where it's like, oh, I reshipped with Jack 8 suited. Um, this is kind of an interesting spot on the bottom left that we'll talk about in a second. I like the 3 bet with the 10-8 suited. So far, so good. and I actually end up liking the flat also. So I'm not going to comment yet. Um, but what I was going to say, actually, we'll pause this tape for a second. What I was going to say though, is when you see a lot of these things where it's like, okay, you open on the button, you're an aggressive person. I have Jack 8 suited, like I ship. Okay, you call me with, you know, Ace King or Ace 10 suited or whatever, right? You start to find, like, when you start stoving these things, that a hand like Jack 8 suited or 10-9 suited against the ranges that you get in against is not, you know, that bad equity wise.
Mm-hmm.
The only things that are really bad equity wise are when you are like are straight dominated, or when you have like hands that can't make many flushes or straights against an overpair. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have one overcard, or if you have flush and straight possibilities, like you can't be in that bad of shape when you get called by when you 3-bet with Jack 8 suited and get called. It's like pretty hard to be in that bad of shape, and so I would say look at that. I would say, well, if my plan is in general to 3-bet this person with anything that's not quite good enough to call with, I see that and I'm just like, okay, perfect. This is a definite 3-bet, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You start to have King 8 suited. Now you start to have an interesting discussion of how many actually hands can I bluff out. You know what I mean? How many better hands will fold to a 3-bet here? And then you start to see, it gets closer to calling. Now you might say, well, if he folds down to Ace 10, then I can get a lot of aces to fold, so I should 3-bet King 8 suited. But if you can't, and against a lot of people you can't, but you might say King 8 suited is still ahead of my opponent's range.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things where you might start thinking about flatting in a different context.
Okay.
Like, we have to ask ourselves, what am I getting to fold? What kinds of hands with equity am I getting to fold? Which better ones? And if you don't find very many better ones that are folding, then it's maybe not a good idea to bluff them.
Right. Yeah.
But if you have a good hand that you want to play, but you won't fold any very many better hands, or hands that have good equity against you, then call. Which is kind of what we're gonna do here with nines. We can't really get him to fold anything that's better, but we have a hand we want to play, so we just call.
Mm-hmm.
Which is oftentimes sort of a similar thing that we might end up doing with like, King 9 suited or something like that from the blinds, the big blinds especially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. C-bet or not to C-bet up top?
Oh, so we talked about this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I when I 3-bet last week, we talked.
Mm-hmm.
I had Queen 10 suited, and that
Mm-hmm.
was like much better. And
Mm-hmm.
what you totally just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But with 10-8, like it just wasn't good enough. I have no pot equity, and like I just didn't think that. I mean, obviously, I'm 3-betting because I'm pretty much bluffing,
Yeah,
and
you're bluffing. Absolutely.
so I just decided to give up.
Yeah, so this is actually good. I mean, one thing that people get in really problems with post flop is their like logic doesn't add up all the way. Like we talked about this last week with the Queen 10 suited hand,
Mm-hmm.
where like they you 3-bet the person because you expect them to fold all kinds of things except for broadways. You don't expect them to fold broadways,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then a broadway smashes the flop, and people go, "All right, let's get my bluff on," right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't make any sense because you expected them to have broadways. Or it's like when you're running a bluff. One of the reasons why like you would maybe fire 2 barrels and not 3 sometimes is if you're let's go back to that hand quickly for a second. If you're oh, not quite. There it is. The ace king on the bottom right. We're gonna talk about for a second. But the if you're running 2 barrels but not 3, one of the reasons for that might be that like you expect when you bet the turn, let's say if the board's like king 7 5 3, you expect him to fold everything but a king. So when he calls you on the turn, you know that he has a king. So you don't fire the river to now get him to fold pocket nines there, because you expect him to fold pocket nines on the turn, and so like he didn't. And so this, I think, sort of by the same topic of sort of being consistent with your thought process, then the top left is a good give up. Okay, so we see bet this ace king.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me.
I think that I just, especially from playing lower stakes, I just kind of get in the habit of almost always c-betting.
That's
And
a
I
good.
guess-
That's a good thing to get in the habit of just doing things without knowing why.
Well, no, that's awesome. But like, obviously, if I think about it, if someone's just flatting me from the blind, like a lot of his range is gonna include, like Jack 10, Queen 10, just hands that are never folding on a flop like this.
Mhm.
That's way too connected.
Mhm.
So, obviously, I have pot equity with like 2 overs probably to anything that he has. So this is probably one of those spots where I should check back and realize it.
2 options here. You could bet call the flop,
Okay.
against sort of a reggy type of guy, which this guy is a reg. I think he's on a few tables.
Why that call?
Because the types of hands that you said, yeah, he's on the upper left table also.
Mm-hmm.
The types of hands that you said, oh man, there's a lot of queen tens and jack tens, and if he has king queen, he probably turns into a bluff here a lot, and all kinds of ace tens, and you're ahead of like all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's like when he check raises, this is one of those people don't realize when someone who's calling with like a wide range on the flop check raises a 9-8-4 board, their nuts to air ratio is totally out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem is you might say, well, that might be like a good inspiration for you to raise, right? The problem with raising here is if we're raising, we need to raise call, because a lot of the things that people were check raising these things are things with equity, things like queen 10 or whatever. And when they face a click back or something like that, they oftentimes just shit because they're like, I have equity, it can't be too wrong, I probably have fold equity, whatever, right? So you either have the option of bet calling, bet 3-bet calling, or just checking back,
Mm-hmm.
right? Checking back has some negatives in that if your opponent has something like pocket threes or pocket fives that would have folded on the flop, you don't get them to fold anymore. If your opponent has something like I don't know, ace 10 that was drawing like really thin, like you give a chance to catch up, for free. Like, there's sort of some reasons why checking back is not necessarily better. With the king of hearts, I really like a bet call here.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and just being aware that on a lot of turn cards, it's very difficult for your opponent to actually get his nuts to air ratio back in line, right? Not to mention, what are the type of cards that people would continue bluffing here? If he has, let's say, give him queen 10.
Like 10, jack, queen.
Those cards would definitely be things he would fire, which are good for him. But what other cards? Hearts, kings, aces.
7.
Yeah. But things like, well, my point was that, like, things that are good for you, like aces, kings, and hearts, or he's going to think are good for him to bluff. And so, like, if I was going to bet this with the intention of running a multi-street bluff, like trying to get him off of, like, small pairs and being able to, let's say, if he has a hand like, 10-8 suited or something like that, being able to barrel a whole bunch of cards and get him off of that on later streets. You know what I mean? So, like, I think that the bet here is actually pretty good. If I didn't have the king of hearts, I might take the check back line.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, like, with the extra equity of having the king of hearts, I kind of like a bet call here, and then remembering that if the turn card comes like so many things are just not a big deal for you, because like really the worst cards in the deck for you here are like tens, jacks, and queens. If a 10 jack or queen peels off,
That's not a heart.
that's even with a heart, like
Yeah.
those are just really awful cards for you.
Yeah.
But if it's not a 10 jack or a queen, or maybe a 7, like what the hell can he have? It's hard to make sense.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make sense. When you're calling with a whole bunch of stuff, it's hard to make sense.
Yeah, it's funny because I was sort of thinking along those lines, and then I timed out because I couldn't get through all the things that I was trying to think about fast enough.
Well, it's a question about like not being intimidated by someone being aggressive, but thinking actually in terms of ranges. So he's raising here. A raise is a representation of a big hand. It's I have a value hand. That's what a raise means, right? Now when you're bluffing, you try to represent you have a value hand also. But if we're going to say, okay, he's going to try to claim that he has a value hand. Okay, fair. He may have a value hand. But how many value hands can he have relative to not value hands there? What does he do with a lot of things that I'm way ahead of? Things like, what does he do with king queen there? A lot of regulars will check raise king queen there every time. And king queen is drawing really bad. You know what I mean? And then, you have to, you sort of have a couple options on later streets. And then what happens if he fires the turn? Well, on a lot of those, blanks, against a really aggressive person, you can either call or raise the turn. Against sort of a less aggressive person, these are sort of something you pay attention to, and like gain put a note down or gain some kind of awareness of, is what do people do when they get called in these spots? You know what I mean? Like when a good way to note this is, does somebody check fold the river after they fire 2 barrels, right?
Yeah.
Does somebody check fold the turn after they check raise the flop, right? Because when you learn little things like this, that will help you a whole lot in knowing whether or not, like, if the turn card is a 3 offsuit and he fires again, are you supposed to call or raise or whatever? Because let's say against me, and this may be giving away a little bit about my game, but whatever. Against me, it's probably a mistake it's probably a good thing to call the check raise, and probably a mistake to play back if I bet the turn. You know what I'm saying? because I'm going for a lot of dead money pickup on the flop usually, and then like when I get called, I shut down a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But you could notice that by playing against me, for not very long, because let's say the first time that I check raise that board and you've got pocket kings and you call, and then I check fold the turn, you're like, okay, I have a good sense of what he does now when he gets called in a check raise or when he gets called in a 3-bet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I 3-bet you call in position. I check fold on a queen high board. Like that's like, that tells you something about what this person generally does in these spots. Do they go for the insane bluff or do they not? I'm okay with the 8-6 calling the min raise here because this guy's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it was a good player, I would lean towards a re-raise or a fold. But against a bad guy, I think that's fine.
Okay.
And then the king queen, I think we c-bet on
Yeah, it was
the
like a
10-9
9-10.
board, and he
Mhm.
folded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fine. Pot equity and fold equity are good. Any questions so far? Are we all?
No, we're good. We're good.
It is sort of the next challenge of playing against good players or people who understand the basics of the game but might differ on small little ideas of what's better to do or not. I think you should call with ace 2 suited in the bottom left, by the way, because like you have this fishy small blind, and that's
Okay.
just better for you.
Yeah.
If you don't have a fishy small blind, you could make a much better argument for raising here, but again, we have this guy's a reg guy. He's shipping ace king. Like, I don't know how many folds we get against him. It's good to do it every once in a while, even just so. But like, I think that hand might be just a little bit too good given who's in the small blind.
Okay.
But what I was gonna say though, sort of the next step of playing against somebody who's thoughtful, who's understands the basic theory, is that people have small disagreements about different things in theory, right? Things like, oh, if I have a big draw and I check raise the flop and I get called and the turn card blanks, should I fire? Right? Some people will, Swedish people will be like, oh, of course, you should definitely fire.
Any small excuse to fire.
Yeah. Somebody who's less aggressive might say, I don't know if this is a good spot, the draw's missed, like whatever. So what you'll find is that there's different. Wow, 6 suck out there. That's pretty legit. I was gonna say, did we bet that flop
Well, I raised pre, and
on the upper left table?
poker. Yeah, this poker man
Mm-hmm.
limped UTG, so I raised with.
No, on the upper left table.
Oh, on the upper left. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I bet the flop.
See, here's a thought we were talking about before: is it better to do a bet like that now or later?
Mm-hmm.
A few things you'll come up against a thinking player. Number one, a thinking player will expect you to bet all of your air there.
Okay.
Right? So your nuts to air ratio is a little out of whack
Okay.
because you have a lot more air than you have aces and sevens, right?
Right.
So the other thing that's nice though is when you check, your opponent never ever ever puts you on air because you checked an ace 7-7 board and they expect you to bet all their air,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is one of those like really really good spots for a delayed c bet. All the things you're trying to get him to fold when you bet with queen jack there, king high.
Mm-hmm.
Pocket fours,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. You can get him to fold those things on the turn. And it's very hard for him to catch up. Let's give him a hand like 10-9 suited. He checks, we check. The turn card's a 9. He's caught up. He checks, we bet. He's going to fold anyway. You know what I mean? He's so terrified of us having ace X or pocket kings or whatever there, checking back, that like we have a ton of fold equity by waiting till later there. So basically my point is this. Anytime you're going to go ahead with a bluff, like, oh, I'm going to c-bet this flop or whatever.
Oh, I think you, kicked the.
My bad.
It's.
I think it should be still recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's keep going.
Should I just make sure it's still recording?
Yeah. I don't think the computer turned off. The computer
Okay.
turned off.
So should be fine.
It should be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Just the monitor got unplugged. My bad.
It's okay.
Anyway, hopefully I'll edit this part out of the video.
Hopefully
Probably
not. Hopefully not.
What I was going to say though is that like we need to get ourselves in the habit of asking now or later, right?
Mhm.
So, am I going to bluff? Yeah, for sure. Should I bluff an hour later? Well, if you really make an argument there it's really hard to make an argument for now as opposed to later.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a ton of air if you bet the flop. In his mind, when you check the flop, like no air, right? Okay.
But in spots like that, do I have to make sure it's a reggy-ish player because don't?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Against somebody who's aware of the basic idea of a nuts
Right,
to
right,
air
right.
ratio of
Gotcha,
like,
gotcha, gotcha.
they're gonna see bet this board with everything. Against a fish who's like, man, I missed the flop. Then you can fire away all the time
Okay.
and do the things that have always worked traditionally because, that works pretty well. Now, actually, against some people, you could call this river. Because they call you things like pocket kings or no, excuse me, king high and stuff like that on the flop, like king 10 or king queen and stuff like that. And then um, they also have like what else? Wait, how did he have? Did he limp call with ace five?
No, he raised. I flatted
I see,
pre-flop.
I see, I see.
Then he checked to
Checked
me on
and
that
you
flop,
bet.
and I bet. And then I turned a
Oh,
jack.
that's even worse.
And
Betting the flop there is really bad because for the same reason I was saying before is that when somebody checks that flop, we
Yeah.
expect them to bet all their air.
Yeah.
We don't expect this guy to be good enough to take the sort of line that I was
Yeah,
talking
that
about
makes
before.
sense.
So like once he checks that flop, I'm giving up with anything. But if I have an ace or if I have a seven, I'm going to town. Because he's like, if he had, let's say, 10-8 suited there, when is he ever checking 10-8 suited on an ace 7-7 board?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
If he has, king 10, he's still probably betting that. And if he's not betting, he's check calling with it. You know what I mean? So it's like it's when someone's just going to tell you their hand, we either have to go really aggro and bet three streets, or we have to just give up. And so I would prefer generally to just give up.
Okay.
Betting three streets against some people isn't so bad though. I want to get back to a point that I was talking about before, which is we need to start paying attention to little things that people like in the spots where people disagree about what to do in a certain spot. You need to pay attention to where someone lands on different types of like small disagreements like that. So like, how big does somebody c-bet? How often does somebody c-bet in this particular spot? Well, some person might c-bet when they 3-bet on an ace king high board all the time, right? Other people might not at all. So you can't just like. I remember when I posted a hand once upon a time, like a 10-20 hand, and I was like, this person is a standard 10-20 reg, right? Somebody responded and was like, you sound like an idiot because there is no such thing as a standard 10-20 reg. Like, at this point, they all know the basics, and like, the only way you could differentiate them is like the small things that they disagree about, and you need to pay attention to those. Otherwise, there's no like standard guy anymore.
Yeah.
Like, down here, there's a lot of sort of standard regs or whatever, but you can still get a sense of what they do as a standard in a lot of these spots just by paying attention. Does this person continue on the turn after I call check raise? You know what I mean? It obviously helps to have a good hand because you win, but much more than that, you also find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like this. What we talked in the last series in Coach Kristy 1, I think, about what happens if you get donk bet. Someone donks into you, right? For pot, let's say. And I think that I said, wait till you have a good hand, and then either put in a raise or call or whatever, and get the showdown. And if they have nothing, then you know what to do against them in the future. You can just raise their donk bets and be cool, right? If they have a good hand, okay, you know not to raise their donk bets. And so just something simple as that, as finding that out, or like what someone gets a showdown in a 3-bet pot with or whatever, will inform how they feel about a lot of these sort of situations. Okay, so this we have a couple interesting hands going on. We see bet the 7-9. That looks good to me. I'm fine with that. I would bet the turn for value.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But on the bottom right though, so I timed out again because I freaked out. But I was thinking that I have a lot of good turn cards, and it's sort of the same thing we were even talking about earlier. But
Well,
is raising
again,
there bad?
I'd rather call than raise
Okay.
because we're not getting him to fold very many things, if any. He called with 10-4 suited there. Do you raise and he called with 10-4 suited?
I put a note on him right after this. But okay. So
Oh, he's a fish. He's limping the button and stuff. And
yeah, he was bad.
okay.
But also like on the river, obviously, it was too.
Yeah, no, that's good. I thought you played the hand well. That was good.
But on the
Sorry, I
bottom-
interrupted you saying something.
Oh, I don't even remember. But on the bottom right, you said that you like call better when you raise.
Oh yeah, that's what we're saying. I like a call better because we're not getting him to fold very many things that are better by re-raising.
Okay.
When he raises there, he becomes pretty polarized. Like he's either got a hand he wants to stack off with, or he's bluffing completely, right? If he's bluffing completely, then we're usually ahead, and if we're not ahead, we can take it away later, most likely. But the reason why I like calling there is because we are ahead sometimes, but we have actually really good equity. Our straight is awesome, and it's a total bluff thing for him. So if we hit our straight, he's totally gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
We like diamonds. We have the ace of diamonds, and we have if we hit an ace, we get good money because he bluffs a lot. Um, on a lot of these random bricks, we can check fold, and that's okay because you don't expect him to necessarily start firing away with like king queen necessarily, unless there's a good turn card for him to bluff. But unfortunately, almost all the good turn cards for him to bluff are also good cards for us. Aces, diamonds, and straight cards. So like, I don't mind calling there and check folding on a card that doesn't help us because I think that he only barrels cards that do help us as a bluff.
Okay.
And so I think that we can call there. It reminds me there was one specific hand I had where like I was playing against, I want to say, Irock Hose, maybe. He's really good. And he opened the small blind. I called him the big blind. And the board was like 7-5 or 7-4 deuce. And I think I had like ace 5. And he bet and I raised. And he called with like ace deuce, for this big raise on the flop. And the turn card was an ace. And I went all crazy, right? And it's like sort of basic idea of just like, so you 3-bet this. I'm cool with that. If it gets crazy, you could start thinking about chipping that hand, but I'm cool with the line you took. I don't think that he's at 50 cent one. People probably aren't bluffing too often.
Yeah.
With their button 4 bets, higher stakes against in certain situations, you might be excited about that. But sixes is facing a 3-bet, Kristy.
I thought that. Well, we were like, I was thinking because we're a little bit deeper, maybe, but I don't know, I still folded.
You're only like 5 big blinds deeper. Like
No, I know,
105
but
big
like,
blinds.
I don't know. I was just looking for an excuse to not have to fold that hand.
No, that's like when we put that. That's exactly how I think about these things. Where it's like, man, I would really like to be deep enough that I could call with this. We talked about this last week though, but you need to be really careful about calling with a hand like that because it's only good if your opponent is depolarized. If your opponent's polarized, it's like pretty bad for us because a lot of their stuff is like flipping with us, but they never pay off. But they also would beat us if we're trying, if we hit. It's just like a really bad situation for us. Whereas if someone's like got big cards there, we're fine. You know what I mean? We can float all the low flops. We can call, we can fold all the high flops. We can, stack all kinds of things when we hit a set. So hopefully we're about to stack this guy. Your bet size, you bet 750 into 9 on the flop. I like that. He's a fish. I like that. This aggro dude squeezes us with 9s. What's our thought here?
I thought he was okay. So yeah, I think he's aggro, but at the same time, it was like an out of the gun raise for me, and I don't know. I thought it would be a little loose to stack off with 9s there.
Probably, especially that given the squeeze dynamic, it's kind of likely he's 3-bets 10s and stuff. You want to, when you're going to stack off with a small pair, you want to make sure that it's a spot where like your opponents are unlikely to have the bigger pairs or like this, the slightly bigger pairs. Like you don't want to stack off with 7s if your opponent's going to be 3-betting 8s at you. But if your opponent never always flats 8s there, which I think he probably does always with 8s there, then 4-betting 9s like loses a ton of value right away. Because when someone like is 3-betting all pairs, then you should stack off with 9s all the time. You're super happy about it. But like if your opponent is flatting with 8s and below there and 3-betting 10s or above, which I think is pretty likely, then I think that it's probably a good idea to fold 9s. So yeah, good job. Definitely like a pretty textbook squeeze spot with King 10 there.
Yeah.
I think that looks okay so far. So far, so good, Kristy.
I did mark a couple of hands later. So if it starts getting towards the end of the video and we haven't covered them yet, I was wondering if we could just like skip to those
Yeah.
ones. Okay.
Yeah. How if they're super late, then we could just skip to them, before, like sooner. Let's see what you do with the King 10 suited first, though, before we do that. Don't fold. You can't fold.
I don't even remember what I did. Oh.
Good. You've come so far, Kristy, since we first started playing. You got a little fish limper. You got a good hand, multi-way value.
I
It's
didn't think that it was that likely that someone would squeeze behind,
oh,
so he
it's
must have
totally
just like,
unlikely that there's one guy left to squeeze.
yeah,
And the only frustrating thing here is when someone squeezes here with like a hand that like is just better if everyone could just play a follow the
yeah,
fish, like,
yeah.
because it's like, all right, man, this time you win like a little money, maybe like you just make everyone else annoyed,
Yeah.
but that'll happen sometimes. Um, it reminds me of like the classical like Simoleus versus Krantz thread where it's like, should you fish slam sky opens, should you three bet queen jack suited. Like really, really epic, long, high stakes thread where Simoleus is like, you should absolutely not three bet, king or queen jack suited there, and Krantz is like, hey, three bet it. And I'd side with Simoleus on this, but like Krantz's arguments are more appropriate for Krantz's style, which is like, I'm just gonna splash, but I'm not gonna fold. And so like people who try to play, this is what I said, people who try to play back against someone like that, try to out aggro that dude, it's just like they do usually do it wrong and they do it badly, and
Yeah.
like it's like when Krantz three bets his ace 10, like he's not doing it to fold it, like he's doing it because he thinks it's better than you, and he thinks you're gonna keep on putting money in the pot, which is like if when people try to get all out aggro, then they start four betting Krantz with like ace 6, and Krantz just plays perfectly and just owns them horribly. Um,
I did the same thing. He min raised. And I was just like, I guess if I hit some sort of flop
on
with
which
his
on which hand with which one?
top left.
You had ace 7 suited.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
he
think
only
that's
had
okay.
like $20.
That's okay. Yeah, you have like, you know, I try to stay away from this whole like you have direct odds type of thing because it's no limit hold'em. It's not limit. Like direct odds doesn't mean very much.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're gonna play pretty well in general, direct odds. If you were to play like even with the person, direct odds to make a hand would be sufficient. Um,
Sorry, Dallas.
yeah, Dallas the dog is excited right now.
Dallas! Somebody's at the
Pause
door.
pause
Sorry.
pause the video.
Someone must have been at the door. Oh, Dallas. And then she unplugged the thing. We're just having all sorts of trouble. Dallas! Somebody just dropped off a package. Too bad it's not my visa. Okay.
No, he's going back for more. Someone's here.
Hey.
Hey, man.
Yeah, well, we just stopped for a minute because she was barking and freaking out.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Is that me or
Huh?
the UPS guy? Or was it?
It was the UPS guy, I think. Okay, we're just gonna keep going. Okay. Ready?
Yeah. What was I talking about?
I forgot.
Shit. um, I have no idea what I was talking about. Oh, I remember what I was talking. Oh, go ahead.
You just play.
Yeah. But we were talking about with the just like direct odds and like calling because you have like it's like a min raise something like that. You have a7 suited. If you play even with someone, you have direct odds to make a better hand than them. Then obviously you would want to call. But if you're playing better than someone, you don't need quite direct odds. So like. Even though we're maybe like not always getting direct odds to call out of position with a7 suited there, if we're going to play better than him, like it's fine. Obviously, the more he makes it, the less we're able to do that. So if he gives us, if he makes it $8 there instead of 2, like we're probably not getting anywhere near, the type of odds we need to make a better hand, than him because he's probably got a better hand than us to start with first of all. So I think that's fine.
Okay.
The aces hand a second ago, we just raised and bet the flop and everyone folded. I think.
Unfortunately.
That's the way it goes. That is the way it goes. But no, it is heartening to see you doing things the right way pre-flop. I think there's still a fair amount of stuff that needs to get improved upon post-flop
Absolutely, for sure.
to get us aggressive in the right spots, to have us not fold equity in the spots that we kind of have been folding equity. But most importantly, I think the thing that we really need to work on is is balancing this idea of nuts and air ratio, the NAR. because if you understand NAR, and your opponent's NAR, uh, it becomes very hard for you to make mistakes against their range.
Hmm.
Um, if you don't really understand, it's the same idea. Like fish don't understand NAR at all. They don't realize that when I play a live game and I open 70% of pots, that when I c bet, that I have like bluffs all the time, and that they shouldn't fold like very much. But they don't play like they don't understand NAR, so they are always worried that I'm gonna have a better hand. That sort of fear or worry of being beat is the same thing that caused you to fold Ace King when you faced a check raise on a 9-8-4 board. You know what I mean? Oh no, he could totally have a set here. Well, sure. When I open 70% of hands, I could also have a set,
Yeah.
but I probably don't. When you play against a bad aggressive person, they have so much error that you never worry if they have a set. If they're going to run hot against you, they're going to run hot. What are you going to do? Um, but that sort of fear still exists of, oh, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make the wrong choice against this person. Which is where you have to get out of the idea of I'm playing against a hand and back to the idea of I'm playing against a range, and that range consists of an NAR. And if you can really think in terms of the NAR and understand your own hand's equity against those ranges, you say, okay, well, Ace King is actually doing okay against these things on a lot of turn cards. So, like, let me see what the turn looks like before I, freak out and start folding.
Hmm.
So somebody's NAR might change dramatically from street to street, like we were saying before. If somebody, pots the turn after you call the check raise, they might no longer have any bluffs. A good player will manage like his own NAR to a point where like it's the opposite of what his opponent thinks, right? Let's say you call that flop, you fold that check raise because you think I have a lot of nut hands. So then I would want to bluff a lot. But
Okay.
you call the check raise when you have a lot of nut hands. So then I would want to only value bet. We're getting a little bit three happy against this guy on the bottom
Yeah,
left.
for sure.
Like once upon a time you could just keep doing this because people like didn't do a very good job of playing back and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's almost to the point now where like given how aggro people are and how like aggressive people are getting, you might take a hand if there wasn't a fish in the small blind, especially. We'll talk about this king queen hand in a second. But if you if you didn't have a fish in the blind, like let's say the fish was under the gun there and folded, right? This guy opens, and let's say instead of having whatever it was you had there, king x suited or something, if you had like say pocket fives, okay, your value from calling with pocket fives pre-flop would be the value of getting a set, the value of somehow playing a pot post flop and winning it, whatever. You may actually find that against a lot of these people who are like really super aggro, like don't like to fold to three bets or whatever, that you might get more value by three bet five betting it. Three bet it, he four bets, but he four bet bluffs a lot, and most of his four betting range is not like value against you. It's like mostly ace king, ace queen, and stuff like that. And then when you ship, like it is like obviously a little bit more high variance, but it's pretty good against somebody who is sort of like that you couldn't bluff very well with king eight suited there. You know what I mean? He's going to open a lot of hands, but he's just going to he's going to fire four bet a lot. He's going to play back a lot, especially someone who four bet folds. It's sort of one of those really unexpected things when when the other person has ace king and they four bet and you ship and they call and they're like, what? You have fives?
Yeah.
And then first of all, it's also super tilting when they lose. It's like you have fucking fives. You do this with fives. And then but then you obviously would have to readjust or whatever. But the idea is that it's sort of people are so anal about getting like three bet too much. They're like, I cannot lose my three big blinds. I have to four bet. That you can take advantage of them by three betting more things that you want to ship.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
three betting more things
Yeah.
that you don't want to fold, basically. Essentially, like widening your three bet value range. I know the last time we talked, I was like calling ace queen in position against a regular is a good thing, but nowadays you can probably get a lot of value by calling it or by three betting and not folding it because people are so aggro that they don't want to get bluffed that like they'll four bet you, bluff you a lot, and then like we talked about last week, we can call or we can play poker against them and use our equity advantages and stuff like that. Okay, let's discuss king queen.
Yes.
So we open, get a call. One call or two calls on the flop? I missed that.
Pre-flop one.
So just heads up pot on flop.
Yeah.
Flop
Okay.
is queen jack 7. We bet flop for value. Get a call. So far so good. Turn card is a king. Top two pairing us. We bet and take a small raise. What's your thought?
So, I thought that on the flop, like I thought that sevens or jacks would raise, given how draw heavy the board is.
Hmm.
And when I bet the turn, I thought that the only real hand I'm worried about right now is 9-10.
I would throw ace 10 in there also.
Yeah,
I think ace 10 plays the same way.
yeah. I didn't think about that hand. I'm saying at the time.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But I was like, so
What are you thinking now, though?
I think.
Well, you know the results, but what do you think? What do you think about this
Well,
situation?
in the situation, I was thinking that I think I gave him credit for being able to raise a hand like King 10 or Queen 10 or Jack 10 or like
So let me ask you a question before we get too far into this.
yeah.
The question is, how often do you think people run bluffs on king, queen, jack boards into the
Yeah.
pre-flop raiser?
Yeah, I didn't.
And the answer is not very often because they the pre-flop raiser hits those boards so often, right?
Yeah.
And people have a hard time folding things like king, queen, or whatever, which I think
Yeah.
we're probably about to discover. But I don't know the results of the hand. But so there's a few things about this to think about. Okay. Against your sort of average 50-cent $1 regular, we also should not be bluffing in these spots because people don't fold king queen, right?
Yeah.
It's like a very simple spot for him if he has the nuts here, if he has 9-10 or whatever, to raise and just get a ton of value because you never fold anything.
Yeah.
Everything you're betting here is like you're value betting the turn. You're value betting the turn for sure.
Yeah.
You maybe have a couple of flush draws or a couple of ace X's that you might value bet, that you might go after, but he's not going to raise to try to get you off those because if he has a king 10 type of hand, he's going to call and hope that those things miss. So to me, this is just like he makes it. It's 12. Yeah, we don't quite have odds to boat up, so we just fold.
Yeah. I totally freaked out.
It's just like pretty straight up. If he's not bluffing, he's value betting.
Yeah.
And if he's value betting, we have to think about what are his value combos. And the only question about whether or not we should continue with our hand is, does he raise king jack on the turn? And my prediction is no.
Right.
Most people call with king jack
See,
there.
at the time when I was thinking all these things, I kept thinking that he would raise all those hands, and then when I look back at it, I was it totally makes sense everything that you just said, and I just didn't
Couldn't bring yourself to do it.
I couldn't bring myself to, because like in the moment you sort of make all these hands that you think that he would raise with just so that you don't have to fold.
Yeah, it's because you were excited before about the money you're going to win when you bet and get called a bunch of times. That excitement causes you to forget about that doesn't not how it works.
Yeah.
That like you need to be able to hand read and stuff like that. So we should, and I think we're gonna get stacked here like all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And he has the nuts, which is I think I predict that. Did I call that real fast?
Yeah.
I think I called that.
Yeah, I didn't even think of honestly. I mean, I obviously thinking of the hands that beat me is ace 10, but I just didn't think that was.
So I want to talk quickly one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you play against your sort of average 50-cent $1 regular, we should never bluff those boards because that sort of thing is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We just value bet. Somebody overvalues some hand. They
Yeah.
ship it in. They whatever. It's fine. So we don't, in his shoes, we're never going to bluff there if we have like ace 5 of clubs, something like that, not flush draw. We're never going to raise the turn there and try to get him off it. But when you start playing a little bit higher, 1-2, let's say, maybe 2-4, even then against most regulars, but against the really good regulars, that's a great spot where if you're thinking about your own NAR, that you have no bluffs in your range.
Mm-hmm.
And if a good regular sees that and will fold king queen to you because you have no bluffs in your range, then it's like not a bad time to start bluffing because your own, like, that guy's NAR is totally out of whack. It's 100% value, no bluffs,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we should be able to fold our king queen there
Right,
without even
right.
really worrying about it too much.
Yeah.
Just like, this guy's never bluffing. So if he's never bluffing, he has to be value betting. If he's value betting, then I'm owned.
Yeah.
But if he knew that we had that perspective, if he was like, man, she's good enough and disciplined enough to fold king queen there, which is again why you don't want to do it against somebody who's not really good. But someone who's really good, then you say, man, he's probably aware or she's probably aware of my NAR, and probably thinks that my NAR is all value here. And when your opponent thinks it's all value, time to bluff. When you have pocket nines on that 9-8-4 flush draw board, that's the time to check raise and get value. Because when you check raise that board, someone goes, a lot of bluffs,
Yeah.
a lot of flush draws and straight draws and king tens and all these things, right? And um, so yeah, another. This might be against this guy, this ace jack, but sort of along the lines we're talking about. Might be better to 3-bet and call a 4-bet against him. You know what I mean? Because he's gonna. We sort of have seen that he's likely to 4-bet and play back at you and stuff, right? And if you 4-bet ships like that, we can fold because he's already shown he can do it with ace king. But if you 4-bet small, we can call there a lot. We can call and play poker against him.
Mhm.
Just an idea. Just working on some different ideas.
Yeah.
But what was the point I was going to make before? There was a good point there somewhere. About NARs, about like managing, these things. When you're up against somebody really good, you love check raising that pocket, those pocket nines, and because it looks bluffy and you have a value hand, and you also kind of like raising like ace five of clubs there on the turn because it looks so valuey, but now you're bluffing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can get incredible folds when you like never rep anything but the nuts.
Mhm.
We mentioned this last time, and I doubt we'll ever actually see any examples of it because like I doubt you'll ever actually do it in this limit. But like raising the river is a tremendous tool against your sort of average reg.
Mhm.
They have been programmed, rightfully so, from coming up through micro stakes, that anytime somebody raises the river, they have the nuts.
Mhm.
They know for sure that they're going to win. And if you don't know for sure you're going to win, i.e. you don't have the nuts, then you have to fold. Right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of spots where it's like somebody bets and you call on a dry flop. Somebody bets again and you're like, I'm kind of bluff catching, but I call. And then the river card comes off again and they bet again and you're like, rather than bluff catch there, which is what most people do, you could be like, or actually he'll fold everything but the nuts here if I raise. So you just ship. And people will fold literally everything but the nuts all the time because the NAR is so out of whack. People assume that your NAR for raising the river is the nuts and no bluffs. So that's your time to bluff. When people assume that when you check raise the flop or when you double barrel the turn, people assume that you have a ton of bluffs in your range. So like when people are aware of your NAR, you don't want people to make good decisions based off of what your NAR is. People being like, oh well, there's two flush draws on the turn and a straight draw. So she bets. If she has top pair, that just sucks. You know what I mean? And they're right. They're right about that. You know what I mean? But if you are barreling those draws less and you're betting the value more, then they're wrong. And then they make mistakes. And flop some more sets, why don't you?
I turned that one.
No, you
on
turn
top
that one.
left.
That's true. Yeah, great spot to bet. Again, this is one of the spots. This is exactly what I'm talking about with regards to NAR. This spot is so good to bet here on 10-7-7 with pocket tens. Even though it's kind of hard for him to have a good hand,
Yeah.
it's also hard for him to think you have a good hand relative to like all the things you could have that are bluffy.
Yeah. Well, also he, called with the gutter ball too, and it's like probably floating-ish or gonna
Yeah, he's
play
folding.
back
He's not
fold.
folding. He's high there. You got probably unlucky that he probably had a hand like like
Dookie.
pocket deuces or something like that. King four suited that he's just like, oh, I'm folding. But like,
Yeah.
no, that's a good spot to be value betting because of how often, of how often your opponent plays back at you or calls or floats or whatever because your NAR is out of whack because you have so much air to bet a 10-7-7 board as a pre-flop raiser. You have a ton of air, all broadways, all ace X's, all king X suiteds there probably. All kinds of like low pairs. You have so much air in your range, and so when you actually have the nuts, that's a nice thing for you.
He just min raised, so.
And you flop another set. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Ace queen's interesting down here. Let's pause this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, before you fold. Too late. You already did it. Talk me through that. Why is that a fold?
I don't even really know.
Top left is not interesting at all. Top left is like we have a set, whatever.
Yeah.
Bottom left.
I had been. I don't know. At the time, I just thought that he. I don't know. No.
It's okay. Let me explain. Um, this guy either has a depolarized range, a polarized range, or everything in his range, right?
Yeah.
JRUVC, who's on multiple tables or whatever, probably doesn't have a very strong hand. The odds are usually against him having a very strong hand, right? Because
Yeah.
he's opening the button, falls to him as a reg.
Yeah.
So we're not too worried about that. Um, the question is whether or not we have sufficient equity to play with ace queen against two guys with bad hands. For sure. There is a chance that this guy is value betting a hand like ace king, pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens. Tough. This guy's already, been four betting us, been opening a bunch of pots. Like, we have a dynamic with him. So the only question to me when I see this in this situation is whether or not I'm four betting or I'm calling. Once upon a time, you used to say, well, I'm just going to four bet to get, like, this money, out of the pot. Which is actually not a terrible idea. It wouldn't be an awful idea just to four bet because, I actually like a four bet. Get it in here. I was going to say call, but I'll say some reasons against call. Call is no good because number one, when you cold flat like a small button opens, small blind three bets, and you're in the big blind, when you flat there, everyone puts you on a hand.
Yeah.
You have a pocket tens, pocket jacks, pocket queens, ace king, ace queen, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So no one ever goes crazy on boards that we want them to go crazy on. Number two, the other guy can play perfectly. He'll probably play very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that actually the skill disadvantage we have by people basically knowing what we have and being able to play pretty well about it is a good enough reason for us to four bet here. If the other guy wasn't involved, and let's say it folded to the small blind, he 3-bet and he raised and we 3-bet and he 4-bet, then I would call.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then we're sort of underselling how strong our hand is relative to his sort of range.
Yeah, it was weird because right after I did it, I was just like, wait, what am I doing? Sometimes, because like in other sessions, I thought against like two people who I have history with, like that's just a perfect time to like once in a while just four bet bluff,
Mm-hmm.
and but then I was getting confused on when I'm four bet bluffing, like can I do it with a hand like ace jack or ace 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, saying like, okay, so I have blockers,
Mhm,
I guess, but then I feel like if I get called, then or
So put it this way:
shipped on, it's kind of bad.
if you get it in there with ace queen or ace jack or whatever, you're never really happy.
Yeah,
It's never really a spot that you're like, you never get it in good per se.
yeah,
However, what you have to say is, is the money that I make from having this guy's fold, so is the, what, 14, 15 big blinds that I make, variance free, plus the equity that I have when I get called, are those enough, to compensate for the times that I lose? And I think that almost certainly the answer is yes. So yeah, you're never happy when you get called. But you're semi bluffing
yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
And when I mean, yeah, you're not really semi bluffing because you're not getting anything better to fold. But like you're trying to collect dead money basically and prevent your opponents from playing perfectly. And that's exactly what it is. Is if you call there, you do have not nice job with the aces there. Tough life for you. I would just shove.
I three bet him. I three bet Shakarina twice with jacks and queens, and he folded both times.
If you time out, I'm gonna kill you right now. Okay.
So I decided to just flat.
Okay,
this time.
that's not a bad idea if you make a smaller raise if you have sort of experience. But this is kind of silly because you're never folding here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I would almost. I mean, it's probably the same. People are probably stacking off of the same things they were anyway. Wow, if you're gonna get called, then I love your raise size. That's fantastic. No, I think that's fine. But no, what I was gonna say is this. Just because we're not really happy when we get called, doesn't mean that it's not a plus UV move. Uh, you know, put it this way: we are not like really happy when we get called with Ace King.
Yeah.
Not really happy.
Yeah.
We're not super happy when we get called with Queens. So just being happy about a situation is not significant enough for us to rely on that as like a situation. Like, oh, I'm not happy when I get called with queens, so I should
Yeah.
probably just fold them or something. Like, no, it's just like you understand that the equity you have plus the dead money in the pot will compensate for the times that you get it in bad,
Hmm.
which is the same time you value bet any time you don't have the nuts. You know what I mean? The fact that guys fold, the fact that they sometimes I have equity and I win sometimes, um, will compensate me for the times that I'm beat. So
Hmm.
anytime you're thinly value betting, it's the same situation. Um, if I didn't have the same history with someone, if I didn't know he was a aggro dude, three betting a
Yeah.
bunch, I didn't know
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
regular on the button. Like, let's say it's a fish opens on the button and a regular, and then the regular three bets.
They're definitely value
What would you
betting.
do there in the big blind there?
Um.
It's an interesting question actually.
Well, I guess I could fold because if they're or I could well I could call, but but in that case like they're obviously value betting the
Uh
fish,
huh.
but at the same time they're value betting the fish with
Plenty
lots
of
of
worse
hands.
hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good. I like where you're going so far. So keep going. So what'd you do?
So then if they're value betting with a lot of worse hands, a lot of which I have dominated,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm flipping with in
Mm-hmm.
position, then I could just flat.
You'd want to flat. Now, the reason why we didn't want to flat, one of the big reasons was in the previous example, where when there's a reg on the button, is why
Right.
the
But the
reg
fish can call
plays
and it would be fine.
exactly. The reg plays pretty well. The fish could call with queen ten off. You spike a queen. The reg checks. You bet. The fish is stacking off. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so but that's not going to happen with the other dude. The other dude probably is folding his queen ten off, and he's like, if he has like pocket sevens, he's going to call and like try to spike a set, and like he's going to play pretty well basically.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, there's these things sort of will change on table dynamic reasons, but like the moral of the story is the only reason you should fold ace queen there is if you think that really your hand is far enough beyond someone's range. So if it was a 14-9, like the
Yeah.
occasional 14-9 you see playing poker, then yeah, you turbo muck so fast you don't even care. You're like, oh, I was ignoring that you were at my table for this entire time, and like, oh, you're awake now,
I know.
so I will fold, and then you can go back to going to sleep for the next an hour till you get kings again. Um,
I know. It was so dumb.
so I it's what again we're talking about this NAR idea. It's like pervasive. It's everywhere. Um, we flat kings there. I'm cool with it. I'm super cool with it.
Yeah, this hand on the bottom left though is the one.
You want to talk about this one?
Yeah. So yeah, if you wanna.
So we open.
No, no, no.
Oh, excuse me.
Rumple foreskin.
Rumble foreskin opens, and we flat with ace queen of offsuit. Again, given our dynamic with this guy, it might still be better to three bet. But since he's under the gun,
Mhm.
I'm cool with the flat. It's close, but I'm cool with the flat.
Okay.
So flop comes down queen seven deuce. He checks, and we have the ace of hearts, and we go to bet for value.
Yeah.
The king's set, I think it will play itself up on the upper right, so
Yeah.
I'm not to worry about that. Um, and so far this is all like playing out like standardly, right?
Mhm.
We bet for value into this guy, and we get check raised to 30 big blinds, so a large check raise.
Mhm.
Um, what are you thinking?
Well, I thought it was weird that he would raise pre-flop and check raise the flop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I sort of was just really confused, especially by his raise size also. Um, and I think probably the worst thing that I could do is call and then fold.
Oh,
Um,
there's no chance I'm folding here
okay.
for a few reasons. This person has to have me believe that he does not bet a set or an overpair
Yeah.
very often.
Yeah.
Then he has to choose this weird, bizarre line at the same time that I happen to flop top pair, top kicker with the very top of my range. Okay? To me, this is like way more likely to be a random like queen that got confused, like queen jack or queen 10 or something, or like some random hearts or like ace 7 or something that's just like very confused. There is a chance that the stars aligned perfectly and he has kings or pocket sevens. But keep in mind, it's hard to have aces. You have an ace. Very hard to have queens. You have queens. You have a queen, right? So he's really looking at like hands that beat you, sets of sevens or deuces, pocket kings, and he has to check those on the flop. So if the stars align and like those are the hands that he decided to check this time when we flop top pair top kicker with a nut redraw, and that's how that happens, then I can't fold this.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things that I was thinking about was
I would ship the flop for value though. I think he calls with plenty of worse things on the flop. When he makes it this big, he calls with his flush draws if you ship.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I was thinking that a turn. I mean, obviously, if I turn a heart.
Every turn is good for you.
Yeah. I thought that it was a little less likely that he would be check raising on a bluff though, because I bet with one person behind me. So.
Sure, no. I mean, but this is again what I'm saying. Like it's. I think he's like reasonably likely to have something that he has equity that has like something good. Some stake in the pot, which is why I like a shove on the flop because I think that he calls with a lot of worse things.
Yeah.
But like really, he's not gonna bet a set into two people here.
Yeah.
He's gonna go for a check raise on the flop.
Yeah.
Even though that just gets like a ton of folds all the time, if you don't hit the top of your range.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems kind of silly that he goes for a check raise here, with a value hand. So I would have shipped the flop.
Yeah.
For sure. But I can see how you get confused, and actually, like once you call the flop, like his turn bet is quite scary.
Yeah, that's what I was
because
thinking.
Because your flop call is quite strong, but by the same token, you also might think that you might call the flop with a flush draw, which makes his turn bet not as scary. I don't know. If someone's gonna play their hand, first of all, I'll put it this way: if he has pocket kings there and he bets, we're gonna get stacked, right? So I'm sort of starting on a basic like premise of like, I'm probably not folding at any point to this guy on this hand. You know what I mean? It would take a weird situation for this guy to fold. For this guy to get me to fold at some point in this hand. Like maybe if the Turco was a king and he like, I don't know, got really excited or something. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It would take a very weird circumstance to get me to fold to fold that hand there. And so I'm sort of acknowledged where it's like, okay, if he's gonna have a big hand here, and play it normally, I'll probably get stacked. If he's gonna have a big hand here and play it like super bizarrely, then I'm definitely gonna get stacked because like it's so unlikely that he chooses to do that with kings.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when what's another good example of this? This happens somewhat frequently where you see somebody like desperately trying to represent something that makes no sense for them to be able to represent.
Yeah.
It's I can't think of another example. I think that watching this in context now, I think there's no way. You told me about this hand at dinner the other night, and I was like, I thought it was a fold over, like just discussing it over dinner, like a fold to the check raise. But like now that I see the actual hand where you have a dynamic with this guy, where you've been aggressive with each other, you have the button is a reg, who is along for the ride. Like the ranges are reasonably wide. It's just so unlikely that he doesn't just bet a set there.
Yeah. Well, but so on the turn, I was thinking if he did check raise with a flush draw, he would just ship the turn. So then when he sized it so that like it was all small.
But he could bet small and just to price himself in.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah, true.
Like I don't read too much into that, but it's just like it's just if someone's gonna take a bizarre line like that. Okay, let me explain this a little bit better too. There are times when someone takes a bizarre line and yet still their NIR is all nuts, right? But those are rarely on the flop.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like on the I when you told me about this hand the other day, I thought of a hand that I played against someone Jedi Poker Tricks back in like 10-20 where we were like 300 big blinds deep at 10-20, and folds me in the small blind. I open King 10 suited. He calls in the big blind. Flop is Queen 9-4, giving me a flush draw and a straight draw. I bet the flop, he calls. Turn card is like a 3 offsuit. I check going for a check raise because I thought I'd get him some folds and things for that. He checks back. River card is a 9, so Queen 9-4-3 9, giving me a flush. I go for a check raise now for value because I think he has like a ton of 9s in his range. So I check, he bets, I check raise the river, and he ships over top. So it's like, man, how could he possibly have... He's repping a full house, right?
Yeah.
How could he possibly have a full house that checks back on the turn?
Yeah.
There's no way. He can't do it. Well, in that case, it doesn't really matter how he got there. He's not bluffing. He's value betting. He bluff shoves 300 big blinds in the river. He's not doing that. He's got a value hand. So he's got a boat. However he happened to get there, he's got it. And I called and found out the hard way that, he had queen 9 and had randomly checked back on the turn. Which is like super sick. Like the worst, such a bad turn card, river card for me. But the difference between that is that on the river, the NAR is people don't bluff there. They never bluff there. On the flop though, the ranges are so wide on the flop that like we can't narrow him down to like one of the 5 hands that beat us.
Yeah.
Like 3 hands really that beat us, like kings and then a couple sets.
Yeah.
Can't do that. It's a flop. All kinds of hands are still in play here.
Yeah.
And so if he's gonna take a bizarre line when I flop top pair top kicker and we've been crazy at each other with with kings or something, good for him. Good job. But I think you're gonna be surprised how often when you like ship that he like snap calls your shove with like queen 10 of hearts and is like just snap calls it, or like shows up with like ace 7 and tanks and maybe folds, or maybe even tank calls with ace 7 hoping you have the nut flush draw or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I think you'd be surprised how often you're way ahead there on the flop.
Yeah.
So I would ship, but I also understand the way the sort of theme of today's session I would say is this idea of like we're not really thinking about like the ranges. We're having a little bit of mubs. Talked about mubs before.
No.
Monsters under the bed syndrome. Monsters under bed syndrome is just like, we have a good hand, but we're not thinking in terms of equity. We're thinking in terms of like, I don't want to like get stacked here. I don't want to like lose here against somebody who's aggressive. And that mubs is a great thing to have at micros, where everyone raises with the nuts.
Yeah.
But when we're at a spot where this guy has 4-bet us, he's 3-betting other people, he's playing aggressively, right? We can't like get too afraid. We need to be aware that he of the amount of air that he has in his range. And I think on that bottom left table, and this also potentially could happen because like you've been losing a bunch of pots on that table, but on that table especially, you've now started to get totally out of whack 3-bet happy.
Yeah.
You're 3-betting like
Yeah.
every other hand now, and I think that we need to go the other way with it. When we start losing, pots and people are playing really aggressively back at us, the trick then for us is not to keep on bluffing at them. When I sweat tournaments with my one and only stake E and horse, we're always talking about like what sorts of things we should do, and he's sort of, I guess I probably shouldn't. Well, no one knows who he is. It's okay. He should. He was folding things like king 9 on the button when he has like 15 big blinds left, and be like, well, why? He's like, oh, because no one folds the ace, and it's just like so simple when you put it like that. But when you start thinking about like what people are actually going to fold, what are you actually getting them to fold? Because if you think there that when you 3-bet with your 10-6 suited on the bottom left, like we just did a second ago, they're not folding any broadways. They're not folding any pairs. Well, we've already seen that. They're probably not folding like very many combos of ace X or king X because they're probably playing back with those, right? So really, we're trying to bluff them off of like very remote combos of queen and jack X, which they still may not fold.
Mm-hmm.
So really, if you think about like what am I trying to get to fold, like now at this point, now that we know what's going on at that table, there's not very much.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna say on on another table or another situation, like when the jack 8 suited at the beginning, just sit down, button regular opens, we got jack 8 suited, like can I get him to fold stuff? Sure. But like we can see how the table dynamics on the upper right table are way different than the one on the bottom left table. Mm-hmm. And I think that one thing to be careful with you, Kristy, now that we've sort of loosened up your game a lot, is when things are not going well, not just becoming a total 3-bet monkey and being like, I'm gonna win all these pots. Look at all these pots I'm gonna win.
Yeah.
Because the goal isn't to win pots, to win money.
Yeah.
And when a lot of these people are they're so like ego driven, they don't want to lose pots. It's kind of like again, you don't want to lose pots. That like, stabbing at these pots with weak hands all the time to try to like take them down is a way to lose money.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like just either valuing your value hands a little bit better, like your ace queens and your ace jacks, and starting to three bet those, like I was saying before, or just tightening up, just not bluffing. It's totally cool to not bluff if nobody folds. I promise.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that should be about it for today, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions?
No, I'm good. I'm excited to play again.
Good. Well, we'll see how the stuff goes, how it develops. Don't just immediately start stacking off with ace jack pre-flop or something.
Yeah.
But like, just be aware of be aware that if someone's going to play back at you really lightly, the definition of getting value is not just getting called by a worse hand, it's getting raised by one.
Yeah.
And with that, we will call it a day. Thank you guys for watching. This has been episode 2 of Coaching Kristy here on deucescrack.com. I'm Andrew Beluga Wheel Seidman, and you are
Kristy Arnett.
Kristy Arnett. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the comment threads, and we'll see you next week. Good luck.
Bye.